No other sports story really matters right now. And the Jays picked up a pitcher who is not terrible in Taijuan Walker, a guy who can occasionally throw 7 innings. Jays fans, wouldn't that be nice? A starting pitcher that can go 7 innings. I don't really care about it right now. It is insignificant to me. I don't want to speak for Tim. I don't want to speak for other people who I work with. But everything else in the sports world right now is eclipsed by one word: protests. And if you thought yesterday was significant, it obviously was, the ripple effect, McAuliffe, today, as we expected and suspected, is rather strong.
Here's the news as we know it right now. Here's what the sporting world is dealing with today. And again, I will use the phrase history in real time because I wrote some of this down before we came to air. And then Renaud Lavoie from TVA just tweeted out that the 2 games will not be played in the NHL tonight. Here's the first bit of information that we got today, and we'll get to the NHL, but we're going to go in order here chronologically so everyone understands with which the groundwork with which we will work with today. First bit of information we got was from ESPN NBA insider extraordinaire Adrian Wojnarowski around noon Eastern, and it was quick and to the point. The NBA's players have decided to resume the playoffs, source tells ESPN. There was then a follow from Adrian Wojnarowski himself. The resumption of playoff games could come as soon as Friday, but there is expected to be a return to this season by the weekend, sources tell ESPN. Conversation was in full swing when Sportsnet's hockey insider Elliot Friedman around 2 p.m. Eastern tweeted players being told to prepare for cancellations tonight. That begins another conversation. And that tweet from Elliot came a little after the one from Evander Kane on Twitter. And he spoke for the Hockey Diversity Alliance when he said, and I quote, "We at the official HDA have formally requested the NHL to suspend all playoff games today. We strongly feel this sends a clear message that human rights take priority over sports." We heard that Major League Baseball has 4 games postponed so far, including the Toronto Blue Jays and the Boston Red Sox. And yet still no official word, at least at my last check, from the NHL, other than Renaud Lavoie, TVA, again, following up on Elliot Friedman's from now 3 hours ago. No games tonight and tomorrow in Edmonton and Toronto. You have to expect games to resume Saturday. That tweet came at 4:58 p.m. Eastern, or 6 minutes ago. And again, Sid, I'll lay it down by saying still no official word from the NHL.
We'll get to the baseball here in just a second. No Jays game tonight. We'll get to the baseball. But you left off, Timmy, there on hockey. So if I may, I just want to start there. Because there has been no, at least in Canada, the hockey discussion about what happened last night and what was going to happen today, to me, has been parallel to what's gone on down in Orlando. It wasn't initially, but it grew. I want to echo what Jeff Blair and Stephen Brunt said during Writer's Block before us on Sportsnet 590, The Fan. Stephen Brunt will join us, by the way, next block. Brian Burke will join us at 6 Eastern. The NHL took a bleep kicking last night on social media. And it was obvious colleagues of ours who were on that broadcast wanted no part of it. And I understand, because sometimes I've been on national TV talking about some dicey stuff. And it's hard. Tim McAuliffe knows it's hard. I know it's hard. But that was the situation that arose. And the NHL is getting a lot of heat for it. A ton of heat. But I want to echo what Jeff and Steven said during their show. How on earth was this a league decision to shut down games yesterday? How? Have you not been paying attention to the last 24 hours? Have you not seen what went on in Orlando? Have you not seen a team that wants a ring in Milwaukee take it upon themselves to the point where the 5 other teams on the schedule didn't know what was happening and boycott themselves? Adam Silver didn't tell them to do it. Ownership didn't tell them to do it. They did it. The millionaires in the room did it. The young black men in that room, along with young white men, made the decision to do it. And when they sat in that room, they weren't just on their phones. Timmy, they were talking to Attorney General of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They were talking to the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, an assembly that right now is in recess. Feels like every assembly in the States is in recess.
For months.
For months. They were affecting change in that moment as best they could. Were other teams completely happy with it? Probably not, because I'm sure they would have loved to have been shoulder to shoulder with them. But that's a topic I'll save for a little later. They made the call. The players made the call. This wasn't Bettman's call. This wasn't Bill Daley's call. And I am no mouthpiece for the league. You can find enough of those in this country. You can find enough of it.
You can find enough video that Zixero is not a mouthpiece for the NHL.
There's plenty of evidence. They appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I've sat beside you while you did it. I understand.
You know. It was the players, okay? And that brings me to my... Actually, forgive me, Tim. If you want to jump in on that, please do now. Because I want to take it...
I agree with you.
Ramp on that a little bit.
I will let you continue because I think this has got to be a conversation and I don't want to interrupt your conversation, but I agree with you to this point, save for a couple things that I'll bring up when you're done.
Okay. So the follow-up I'd like to have is the one thing that really bothered me last night was after the Jays game, was after the Stars Avalanche game, when players were asked about why you played. Now, I understand when things are happening in the moment, it's tough. Welcome to my career with this guy, okay? When things are happening in the moment, you got to make decisions that are tough. You can't sit there for 4 hours because you have to think it over because you're afraid to be wrong. You either act or you don't act. But after the game, Charlie Montoyo said, we had no idea what was going on. That boycott in Orlando was 4 Eastern. First pitch in Buffalo was 6:30. I am a huge Charlie Montoyo fan. That is BS. Don't give me the we didn't know. The Dallas Stars and Avs after that game last night. We weren't really sure what was going on. You weren't really sure what was going on. You're a bunch of under 30s with phones in a bubble, and you have nothing else to do but look at your phone. You didn't know what was going on? You didn't know what was going on. That's not an excuse. Alain Vigneault today said he doesn't know what's going on. That's lazy, and that's being a coward, and that's not where we're living right now. You need to know. And you need to pick a side. Don't give me that garbage that you didn't know. You want to protest and put it on the gram in May, then you know. Players drove this. Players drove this yesterday. Drove it last night in Major League Baseball, by the way, a league who have 8% black players. The lowest number of our lifetime, McAuliffe. What's happened in that sport with African-American players is unbelievable. But 3 games were in play. The National Hockey League has no arena conflicts. You can play these games anytime you want. Anytime. Don't tell me you didn't know. That's garbage. From Alain Vigneault to the Avs to the Stars to Charlie, that's garbage. Don't give me that. And if it's true, also unacceptable. Figureitout.com. It's 2020. Have your head on a swivel. Know what's going on.
Do you really believe that people have to pick a side? Because the part for me that I understand in the answer, I'm a hockey nerd. I've been focusing in on the game, or I only had 2 hours. Like, just because they couldn't make that hard decision, and they being whoever the heck you want it to be in this moment. Like, you've seen the hate, the fire from every side over the last, whatever you want to call it, 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, years. 2 years, 6 years. Whatever you like, there's a little bit of empathy from me for the people who don't want to face that fire. Like, I understand it. There are people who, I said yesterday that what the NBA players were doing was courageous because I knew what they were about to undertake and what would happen. And when people got a hold of it and created their ideas and created the false equivalencies that you read all last night and today, it's not easy. It's courageous. And I'm with you. I thought the NHL took an unfair amount of criticism last night, considering that they weren't the only ones that played. I mean, Blue Jays, as you mentioned, played. The Boston Red Sox, as you mentioned, played. The New York Mets, with one of their players in tears, Dominic Smith, alone, what felt like alone, kneeling during the national anthem. It wasn't just the NHL, though they got lambasted the worst. And I think why they got lambasted the worst, Sid, was because last night was an opportunity for the NHL to prove. And I mean the players, I mean the league, I mean executives and owners all across the league. They had a chance to prove that they aren't who we thought they were. You and I had a conversation on the show yesterday. I said, what about hockey? What's going to happen with the NHL? And you and I both kind of chuckled and said, well, they're going to play. We knew they were going to play, right?
I actually chuckled. He's not lying. If you want to go listen to that tape, Tim said, what about the NHL? And I went, come on. That's exactly how that played out.
They proved that they were exactly what we thought they were, to quote Denny Green. And as a guy who grew up in a hockey family and spent more times in rinks than most thought humanly possible as the youngest of 4 boys and a dad who coached them all, it was particularly disappointing. And before you jump in and before you get upset, here's why. Hockey is a sport built on the team. And I bought into that. The name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back of the jersey. And that Chris Letang and everyone on that team are just as important as Sidney Crosby. And Kevin Lowe and everyone on that team were just as important as Wayne Gretzky. And Adam Graves and the kid line helped Mark Messier get another title. That hockey culture was about that hockey culture is about everyone in the dressing room and standing up for what's right. Like, how many speeches did you have to hear from hockey people growing up about standing up for what's right? Man, the code is built on that. And the NHL and its players had a chance to prove last night that they weren't the ones we thought they were, that they were able to stand up for what's right. And there was a moment of reflection or whatever you want to do it, but they could have done more. And I think that's what people were saying. And canceling tonight, that's recognition, and it's important, but it would have meant so much more if they did it last night. Not done, still can do a bunch of things to help aid and abet the cause. They can still add to actionable change. In fact, I've been told, and I wrote some of this down, that the Hockey Diversity Alliance asked for some things, like arenas to be used as polling stations for the upcoming election. We've seen that in Atlanta. I believe we're now seeing it in Houston and St. Louis and the Cardinals.
Chavez Ravine as well in Los
LA.
Angeles. LeBron's involved in that, yeah.
They asked to use blackout jerseys in warm-up to sell them online, raise some money for some of the initiatives that HDA is talking about. PSAs, a logo. All have gone without a response, at least from what I've heard. Okay, hockey, it's time to prove all those statements after George Floyd's death weren't just lip service or damage control. Nazem Kadri last night after the game. Eventually, words get stale, and it's about action and making a difference. NHL, it's time to prove that you aren't who we thought they were.
Well said, Timmy. Tim, for those on radio, for those listening to the pod, Tim's got a change hockey. Is there a third word under there, Tim? I'm not seeing. Change hockey culture.
It's the HDA hoodie, but I also believe that there's more culture beyond hockey that needs change.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not
absolutely.
Just
yeah, we can go down the junior ranks on that one. Absolutely.
In other sports too.
What? It was just really disappointing. Like I don't have a better follow up to that, Tim. It was just really disappointing for the late game between the Stars and the Avs, and I could care less who won it. I don't even know. But to not even have the end racism on the video boards before Tampa Boston. Okay, great. How do you do that? Like who disagrees with that? I didn't understand what happened before the Boston Tampa. That's what I'll slightly criticize the NHL for today. I didn't get that. But I'm also mad in a way that there was absolutely nothing ahead of that Avs Stars game last night in Edmonton either. And I want to applaud, if the reports are correct, Tim, from, was it Rick Dhaliwal? Rick Dhaliwal's reporting that the Vancouver Canucks have kind of spearheaded this today. And Rick is also reporting that they talked with Ryan Reeves. Again, Golden Knights and Canucks series has gotten off to a crazy start. Remember that series when it started 8 years ago? Canucks have talked to Ryan Reeves to get a feel for the situation. Both Vegas and the Canucks are working together, that according to Rick. So, I mean, if you subscribe to better late than never, then this is a really good thing, and I applaud. It's just another reason to like the Canucks. There's a lot of reasons to like the Canucks. But I felt badly for the Matt Dumbas of the world and Evander Kanes and everyone in the alliance who's had to kind of be forced to speak on this because no one really else in the NHL, let's be frank here, has. And like Matt Dumba had to go out there on opening Saturday and speak. Matt Dumba's that's not his role. He's a hockey player. He's got games coming up. He was left on an island. And I think those guys last night felt like they were also left on an island. And I don't know how, I don't know if postponing games today and tomorrow, Tim, fixes it. I don't even know if fix is the word. But some things have to be repaired here.
Sean McKenzie tweeting out in the last little while, and I think he sums it up pretty well. Speaking out and taking action against racism and racial inequality isn't political. It's moral, ethical, and the right thing to do. Don't be more upset about athletes not entertaining you tonight than the racism that exists. And it's very hard for people to get past these things, and I understand it. I understand why it's difficult for you. But if you, as I've said before, if you just break it down to people crying, pleading, demanding equality, what are we really talking about here? Just because other nations, and I got a tweet from someone who's always been very thoughtful with us and to us that said, you might as well come out and say, vote Biden, vote Democrats. One, that's another country. Two, just because they politicize everything doesn't mean that someone asking for equality needs to be politicized. And I think that's what Sean's saying. Speaking out, taking action against racism and racial inequality maybe shouldn't be political. It's just moral, ethical, and the right thing to do.